It's very clear, maybe this year more than ever, the NBA has got a problem, guys. And that problem is tanking. And through all of the methods they have gone through to try and solve the tanking issue, it just, I don't know if it's recency bias, but it just feels like it is getting worse. So, let's try and come up with a solution to tanking in the NBA. And like I said, they've tried some methods towards stopping teams from tanking. Like, you can't have star players always sit out. There are larger, like, you have two star players, they can't both be sitting out on a given night. They have made restrictions on why you can rule players out a little bit more strict. It's harder to find reasons to rule players out. There's no longer just leaving a guy out for rest. There actually needs to be injuries. So teams are getting more and more creative. It reminds me of like ads. The more we try and block ads and we have these ad blockers and whatnot, the more the ads get creative and find ways to still advertise to you. Well, how about the tanking? The more we implement ways to try and stop tanking, the more teams get creative. They get creative with their injury reports. They get creative with the timing of things. And now we're getting to the point where the Utah Jazz, and the Raptors did this last year too. It's not just them. If they're winning or in a tight game in the fourth quarter, they are just going to pull out their best players. They're going to pull out Jaren Jackson Jr., Larry Markkinen. And Jaren Jackson Jr. all of a sudden is going to miss the rest of the season with injury. An injury the Memphis Grizzlies never saw, but for some reason the Utah Jazz have been able to see. We're getting more and more creative here. And it's really diminishing the quality of the product. It's difficult. Like, tickets are expensive, especially in Toronto. So it's tough to justify sometimes paying that admission to go into these games. You don't even know which players you're going to see on any given night. And this is just nothing like other sports. Like, you don't get players just randomly sitting out for rest. Like I think to hockey, guys are always playing. I think to soccer, the only reason like some of the top guys will be not in the lineup is because there's a big game midweek or a big game they need to be saved for. That's not really why necessarily you see it in the NBA. So I can understand where frustration comes from there. And then even greater frustration where like you're watching a game, it's a great game, then you get to the fourth quarter. Okay, Markkinen and Jaren Jackson are out of the game now. They're not playing for the rest of the quarter. So the NBA has a problem with tanking. So let's try and look to what solutions are out there for tanking. I think a lot of the solutions we see, or proposed solutions, for example, a lot of them just make it so that tanking occurs higher up in the standings. For instance, we make it so only the bottom 4 teams can get the first overall pick. Well, guess what? Teams who are bottom 5 or 6 know this, and they need to very aggressively tank to make sure they're a bottom 4 team. You kind of move it up there. People have said teams that miss the playoffs all have the same odds to get the first overall pick. Equalize the odds outside the playoffs. Well, now I think teams in the play-in are going to really not want to be in the play-in. They'd much rather get an equal shot at getting the first overall pick. So now the tanking happens around like the 9 or 10 seed, which, I mean, maybe it already does. So some propositions to try and change this and make these games more competitive throughout the season are taking away the draft or making it so that there's like now the NBA's talk about making a tournament for teams outside the playoffs to play for the first overall pick. And the winner of the tournament gets the first overall pick. And I think in theory, like, this is like, oh, this would be exciting. This would be a fun idea. But like, there's no way this will work. There's no way this will work. First of all, every team who's not in the playoffs, or every team playing in this tournament as a lottery team, They need to own their own pick. So what if you're the Clippers and you tank and you suck and Oklahoma City own your pick? Does OKC get to play in this tanking tournament? They're going to win it every year and have the first pick every year. Do the Clippers have to play in it? Even though they don't own their pick? Are we just going to avoid that spot and that team's not playing in this tournament? That's a bit messy. On top of that, for like a tournament for lottery teams that determine draft order, who the hell's playing in this? What do players care about the draft? Like, consider you're a player on an expiring contract. There's no way you're going to want to play in a tanking tournament, in a tournament for the first pick to reap rewards that you are never going to see. What does this do for you as a player? I don't want to get injured in this. I don't care about this pick. Like Adams was so fixated on these tournaments. Like, they brought in this in-season tournament that players, even with these outrageous financial incentives, these players just do not care about it. And I cannot see them. I can only see them caring less about a tournament for the draft picks. Now, it's important to remember that, this Legion Hoops post, the NBA is discussing creating a tournament among large teams to determine draft order in order to stop tanking. They're discussing. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're implementing, of course. I think abolishing the draft is actually an interesting thing for teams to take on. You could have it so you're only allowed to sign a certain amount of players that are entering the league, that declare to enter the NBA. There is like strict salary caps on signing those players, so it's a little bit more dispersed. But like small market teams kind of get cooked in that scenario. I agree. I think the solution for me, because I really don't see, I haven't been truly convinced on a solution. I would love to hear in the chat a proposed solution you have. The only solution that I see that is alleviating a lot of the issues here, you take away the play-in tournament, because I think the play-in tournament is a little bit silly as well. You've got 82 games to get into a playoff spot. And in the Eastern Conference in particular, there's teams that maybe don't even want to be in the play-in tournament because they want to get a better draft pick. So teams are tanking from there. I think you get rid of the play-in tournament. I think that there is enough incentive in making the 8 seed to deter teams away from being in the lottery. Because if you're an 8 seed, you've got 4 guaranteed playoff games. In particular, your ownership gets 2 home playoff games at the minimum. Making the playoffs is a moneymaker for a team. So there's enough incentive there, and for the players to get there because they get 4 playoff games the minimum. If you snatch a game, you've got 5 games. You got 5 games right there. So I think there is a lot of incentive to actually just straight up making the playoffs as the 8 seed. And teams will be chasing to get in as the 8 seed. I think the in-season tournament was really invented to make games more important and lower down the standing for teams trying to chase the play-in tournament. But I don't think it's quite really working that way anymore. So I think top 8 make the playoffs, go back to that format. The teams that miss the playoffs, even odds. Even odds for the lottery. Now, the issue with this is that absolutely the worst teams who need the help don't get the help. They don't have that help from the draft. I get that. That's problematic. But I think we've just gotten to such a point with tanking that something needs to be done. And I think this just allows teams to further be competitive. One of the main issues here really is just that these games just won't matter for these teams still. These games are unincentivized. Like you have games, like there will never be a game that doesn't matter in like the English Premier League soccer, for example. Because there are all these European position teams are fighting for in the top half and in the bottom half. You're trying to avoid relegation around mid-table. Every single position you finish above in the standings is extra money for your club. Extra money for your club to be able to spend in the next year. So maybe some sort of incentive along with it for finishing higher in the standings. Does it give you more ability maybe to spend in the offseason? Does it give you just a bonus for the players? So maybe the players get a bonus. Maybe that's the best way to do it. Is there some sort of restriction lifted on the cap for you? Something like that. There needs to be incentive for winning. There needs to be a drive and motivation factor for winning. I think for the players, just being able to go out there and want to play and want to showcase themselves is pretty good to not have to worry about the lottery odds. So I think that's the best way to do it. I mean, I think the truly best way to make games more competitive is just abolish the draft. You want to look good and set your team up for people joining the league to sign them. I don't think we can ever get that drastic. I think that eliminate the play-in, top 8 make the playoffs, lottery teams all get the same odds. There could be a team that tanks out of the 8 seed because they want to get a better shot in the draft. But I think the allure of 4 guaranteed playoff games and 2 guaranteed home games is enough that players and teams will want to make the playoffs there. That is my solution for tanking. I would love to hear yours if you have one.